Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I am the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. Can you recall a time when someone you knew was so out of touch with what was happening right in front of them that they ended up destroying a relationship? Has that person ever been you? Now, that is an extreme case. What about some more subtle clues? Are we able to pick up the nuances of what is going on for us in any situation? Maybe, and maybe not. The thing is, being aware of our emotions and how we deal with them can mean saving a relationship or ending it. And today, my guest is going to share with us his story and the skills he developed in transforming his life and those of countless others. Now, before we get into all that, I want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platform so you can stay updated on our latest content while also helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And for that, I just want to say I'm truly grateful. Let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
So, as it's customary, I like to start by asking a couple of questions to help us set the stage. And so the questions I have for you today are, can you recognize when you are being triggered? And if so, what strategy do you have for staying in a resourceful place emotionally? Or regardless of whether you recognize the triggers or not, if you have strategies to keep you present and in the moment, then today's guest is a master facilitator in emotional intelligence, is going to share with us his story and his methods for how, as men, our emotional intelligence changes as we mature from boys into grown men. So allow me to introduce my guest, Brian Clate. For the first 15 years of Brian's career, he rose through the corporate ranks, earning awards, executive titles, and he really excelled at winning. And it was not until 2014 when Brian realized that the negative impact that winning had not only on his company and the teams he worked with, but his family and especially himself. This resulted in Brian going through his own evolution. Brian's passion is transformation, and his purpose is to help those seeking personal or organizational change. He's an award-winning iPEC certified professional coach, former International Coaching Federation board member, and an avid outdoorsman. So hopefully we get to hear a little bit about that today. So today, Brian helps others transform into the people, leaders, and teams, as well as companies that they aspire to be. So welcome to the show, Brian. How are things today?
Things are going well. Thank you very much for having me.
Right on. Well, thank you so much. I know we've tried to reschedule a couple of times to get us together, and I'm so grateful because emotional intelligence and the work around that is so important, especially for men, as it tends to be one area of our lives where we're not that in tune in. And so as I like to get started, would really like to talk about your hero's journey. We talk a lot in my men's work about all of us on a personal hero's journey. And I always like to get that from my guests to find out what their journey looked like and how it's transformed who they are today in doing the work that they do. So take it away, Brian.
Sure. So my journey, it's a long one. Right. So, I mean, you can probably tell by the gray in the beard, I've been doing this journey for a while. And as with most folks, you can go back to early childhood. Yeah. And, it's one of those things where, I am a child of the 80s, which, right. Yeah. Gen X. So, we were raised in a way that was around knowledge and winning. Right. Every single Saturday morning, knowledge is power is what came across your cartoons, right? In between, Super Friends and the Flintstones. And right. And that's what you were doing, right? When you went to school, knowledge was power. So the more knowledge you had, the better grades you got. And it wasn't just about getting grades. You were, held to winning at everything in life. I mean, it didn't matter if it was, winning in a sports contest. I remember, being in, who could get done with their test the fastest in school in fifth grade. who could turn the Scantron in the fastest. Because when you did that, you got rewards, right? So, everything was about winning back then. It was, you kept score all the way through. I mean, it was very important. And, the more that you won, you also didn't really, you had to be a good sport, but you didn't have to focus on whether someone else felt bad about you winning. If someone, felt bad that they lost, that's their issue.
Yeah.
Get better, right? That was the thing, is if you don't like losing, then you need to get better so that you can beat that person. And so, going all the way back to, as early as I can remember, 6 years old,
wow.
that was the mindset. And that was the mindset that I held and used and leveraged, through grade school, through middle school, through high school. But something started to happen in high school. So something shifted from middle school to high school, where I went from winning to surviving. It was more important to survive than, which may have meant losing or may have been, pretending not to care, than it was to win. And so when I was in high school, I gave up those things that I was extremely good at personally. I was an extremely talented baseball player, and, I just stopped completely cold turkey. I was extremely, extremely good grades all the way up until high school. And then when you could get yourself beat up for having good grades, good grades stopped.
Yeah.
Because it was about survival now. And so I let fear start to creep in. Now, I didn't know this as a kid. I made 1,000 other excuses why I didn't want to play sports anymore, why it wasn't important to me to turn the classwork in, whatever it was. But in the end, as I've gotten to become my older, Brian, if I look back, I go, I was afraid. And what I was afraid of wasn't failing. I was afraid of succeeding. Because if I was successful in baseball, there would be higher expectations of me. I had to grow up. Because when I talk about being good at baseball, I was actually, considered a potential prospect.
Wow.
So the reality of it hitting you at 15, 16, when you're, popping the glove at 90 miles an hour, running a 4.6, 4.7 40, and lots of people are lining up to talk to you, you realize I've got to grow up real fast.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. As much as you think you want it, I know I didn't want it. So easiest thing to do was just quit altogether.
Right.
Same thing with grades. I figured as long as I didn't get good grades, I didn't have to worry about college. And college was scary, right? So, going out and getting a job seemed a lot easier because I'd had a couple of those part-time job things. I knew how it kind of worked. But college and expectations of college and being the first in my family to go through that no, we weren't in. No, school is a secondary thing. So let's just do enough to get by.
Yeah.
So I did that for a bit. And so in high school is when I kind of shut things down. But then I realized I got tired of living in my parents' basement. And even though I was working full time and doing very well at the job I was doing, it became very frustrating when I realized no matter how much money I made, I wasn't going to get out of my parents' basement. I needed something more. I needed that education because everywhere I was looking, this is in the 90s now.
Yeah.
This is when it just started with, if you wanted a white collar job, they were looking for people with four-year degrees.
Yeah.
And so I had to become very, very humble and ask my parents for help, right? I'm a 19 to 20-year-old man, dagnabbit. Why am I going to mom and dad asking for help for college? Because I wasn't able to afford that either. And I realized I wouldn't be able to do school and work at the same time and give school everything I needed to give it.
Yeah.
So I had to do that. I had to go and ask for help. And luckily my parents offered to help. And I got into school, got through that well. But then I got in the corporate world. So, continuing on the journey, now I'm in the corporate world. And now I've dedicated my life back to succeeding. right? So, but I only know one way to succeed, which is to win.
Yeah.
Which means that no matter what I'm doing, I've got to be better than everybody else.
Mm.
And I'm making sure that everything I do is to be better than those around me. My teammates, my supervisors, my friends, didn't matter. I'm going to be better, and I'm going to get acknowledged for being better. And in doing so, I will rise up corporate ladders. And in the 90s, that worked really well.
Mm-hmm.
Every 2 to 3 years, promoted, raised, moved across the country, asked to be on national programs, national projects. But in 2009, things started to change because the corporate environment was no longer just about knowledge and capability. This is when the influx of emotional intelligence started to find its way into the corporate world.
Yeah.
Now it was new, and the thing is I was terrible at it. like I was failing at it. It was one of those situations where you would get your review, and there was always, a bunch of stuff laying out that things you're doing well, and there's always the but.
Yes.
And this became the but. And the but was that people, while they liked me being on their team, they didn't want me to be part of their team. So it was, having me on your team meant that the team was going to do well.
Yeah.
Right. So having me on the team was important, but being my teammate sucked because I held everybody the same standard that I held myself to. And by the way, I realized I'm still competing with you as my team. So I still held that same mentality.
Right.
And so flash forward, a little bit further, and, I start to lose the use of my left arm.
Mm.
I don't know why. I assume that it's from weightlifting injuries or something along those lines.
Right.
But I can't tell. I just know it doesn't want to work anymore. And being who I wasn't going to go to the doctor and ask for help. Right. I already knew more than the doctors knew anyways. There wasn't anything broken. It's just a muscle strain. What are they going to do? It's just therapy. I can do this myself. The interesting thing was that from 2009 to 2014, I worked for 3 different companies, and each job that I had, technical knowledge, capabilities continued to do very well in, but each organization continued to express the concern around the emotional side.
Mm.
And as this was happening, my left arm was becoming less and less useful to the point to where I could no longer lift it. So it wasn't locked, but to move it, I would have to grab my wrist and move my arm around. That's how I got dressed. I was willing to deal with this until 2014.
Yeah.
So I'm going through this, and I'm still recognizing I need to improve personally, taking all the courses that I could take, reading all the books, leadership, you name it, it was being done because I wanted to win. And here was something I wasn't good at. It wasn't until 2014 when I went through a program that my company was putting on, called the Value Leadership Program. And we were going through the program, and at the beginning, I just kind of dismissed it because it felt hokey, right? I mean, it just feels hokey, right? You're watching things, you're what's your purpose on this earth, all that good jazz. And I'm like, oh, come on, just get to the cut of this. What is this? And when we went through that, and the team had to pick someone they wanted to lead them through this program. And at that time, it was about 30 vice presidents, assistant vice presidents. They were officers of the company, but not the highest level officers. And we were a team, and we had an outcome we had to do. And so my peers picked me to be the leader. And I didn't want that. I just wanted to sit in a corner and get the check mark. But they asked me to lead the team because it was a project. And I said, all right, I'll do it. Now, here was the part that changed it for me. was that the person who ran the program called me to the side and said, your team's asked for you to lead, but you don't get to lead the way you know how to lead. You have to become me, and you're going to lead as if you are me. And that was a huge, number one, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Right. So it gets those juices flowing. But number two, it's 180 from how I've ever led anything before in my life and how I've been. So to get to the short of it is, we're in the second session, and as part of being him and part of leading the way he is, I'm having to take these groups through a limiting belief exercise, a transformation exercise. But my job isn't to just talk them through it. My job is to absorb, feel, and project within the room of 30 people the energy that's needed to move this group forward, remaining silent. So I'm learning how to do this.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's really, really intriguing. Never done it before, but things are lighting up all over the place. I'm in a room that's probably 30 by 30 as far as size goes, and people are whispering because no one wants to hear their dirty dark secrets heard. But I could sit and listen all the way in a corner, and I could hear, as if I was sitting right next to them, what those dirty dark secrets were. And I could pick any one person. I thought this was really neat. So I talked to the person. He's like, well, all right, well, talk to me tomorrow, and we'll see, maybe I'll share a bit more with you. I said, okay. So I went home, arm still doesn't work. And I realized that I've been, for lack of a better term, half-assing the program for myself.
Yeah.
Right. I'm all into everything else, but myself, I'm not giving it my all. And so I go and do the exercise that I just watched everybody else go through, that I just helped, energetically everyone go through. And I do it for myself as I go for a walk. And I get real honest with myself about what it is that I believed was holding me back and why. I woke up the next morning after going through this. And it was, as anyone who's ever done this work, it was extremely, gut wrenching. It's soul searching. It's pushing you to the limits, and you don't want to see this, but it's there and it's in front of you. So I wake up in the morning and my left shoulder is fully functional, as if it had never had a problem before. And so, as promised, I met him the next day, and he sat down in the room and he looked at me and he was smiling, and I looked at him and he said, so what do you want to ask? And I said, what the hell did you do to me? And so my journey, my new journey started there.
Yes. About
learning not just what it is that he did to me, because in the end, he didn't do anything to me. What it was what I did to me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I had to go through and learn was that the approaches that I had been taking, whether, it was, in knowledge gaining and in the way I was trying to learn to become a better leader, a better person, was all externally focused.
Yeah.
And so I had to start internally focusing. And, the term emotional intelligence has a lot of caveats to it. A lot of times people talk about it being empathetic to others, putting yourself in others' shoes. Mm-hmm. I found that from my perspective, that's all rubbish.
Yeah.
All of it is rubbish. What it's really about is recognizing within yourself
mm-hmm.
where you are, what you want to get out of who you are. Again, we talk about a lot in that moment, how that's going to serve you going forward, and then how to call forth those emotions that you need at that time to make that happen.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that assessment. And what a great story to finally recognize the blockage that was happening in your body was from some unresolved work that needed to be done, and being put in a position like that, and to give yourself the courage and the strength to sit in it and to do that work. And I think that's why I was so excited about us having this conversation today, Brian, because I find that for many of us men is that we're not able to sit in, or we haven't learned the skill to sit in that emotion and really come to understanding who we are and what our makeup is. And and it sounds like we're of the same generation. I'm a child of the 80s as well. So great hair band music and whatever else you like to listen to back then. And, it was a great time, but and the thing that I had made some notes listening to you tell your story, and you're absolutely right. We were raised on everything was about the success, and the 80s is defined as the decade of excess. Mm-hmm. And I think it was shown in all of our lives, right? And how we pulled out, how we actually showed up and lived. So the question I want to ask you is how has your definition of success changed over the years now, from what it was in the 80s to how you would define it today?
So what's interesting is that I've had to change the definition of a lot of things.
Sure.
And what I had to do is I had to change my relation. It wasn't so much that I changed the definition of success. I changed the relationship with success.
Love it.
And so what I learned, what I had to do, and for me, what success now looked like was no longer me chasing after being successful, no longer chasing it.
Yeah.
It was the true acceptance that if I could just be quiet for a second, and let things happen the way they're supposed to happen.
Yeah.
With my involvement, right? It's not being passive. You still have to be active.
Exactly.
But if I could learn to do that, success would find me, and success would find those that I was around.
Mm-hmm.
Now, going through the Value Leadership Program, I learned how to do that. I learned how to go from a leader that felt that the way you led was you were in front, you were directing, you were answering, you were the face of something, to where you were no longer the face. As a matter of fact, the way that you knew you were successful as a leader is if an outsider came into a room that was working together, they couldn't pick who in the room was the actual leader.
Yeah.
It was your presence. And again, as the leader, my responsibility was no longer to be the knowledge expert. It was to be the person that sat and let everyone else be successful and be more, the way that it was explained was more the maestro, calling out, recognizing when one group needs to go up and one group needs to go down, when one voice needs to be heard and another one needs to be, tampered a little bit. That became more the role. And so I changed my relationship with it. I no longer sought titles.
Yeah.
I no longer sought money. I no longer sought recognition, because I came to the understanding and the acceptance that money needed me more than I needed it. Those titles needed me more than I needed it. And the idea of fame and recognition needed me more than I needed it. And what I mean by that is that, use money as an example. Money has no purpose if it's not in a person's hand.
Right.
A stack of $1 million sitting in the woods does nothing. Money needs to find people. It needs to find hands. It needs to find those with a purpose.
Yeah.
And as long as you can remain aligned to your purpose, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
And make sure that your actions are aligned to that purpose and you internally are working towards that purpose. Then money finds you. Fame finds you.
Mm-hmm.
You can be famous the other way, but it usually comes with a whole lot of negative stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how that's how I changed it. And that's how I continue to operate.
Love that, Brian. I liked how you pivoted and changed that and that framework from it, right? From a definition to relationship, because it truly is about the relationships in our life. And we forget about that. We think that as we try to define who we are, it's really the relationship of who we are as men is what really is a catalyst that drives change. And so how did that recognition then, was there a similar change in your personal life as well? From as you started to incorporate, the value transformation work that you're doing and the EQ stuff, how did that affect your personal life?
It was messy.
Yeah.
It was messy. Right. So I'm married to the same woman that I met in college.
Outstanding.
Right. So this is back in the mid 90s, met her. But she grew to know me as a way. My kids knew me as a way. And for me to go through this change, again, I went overnight from arm not working to arm working. And when I was doing this, I was traveling. I was away from the family for 4 to 5 nights a week, 2 states away, and coming home on weekends. And so when it happened, they had no idea who they were seeing anymore. And a big part of it is, well, I was trying to figure it out myself, right? So I'm trying to figure out for 6 months, they see me for 2 days a week. I'm going through all of this stuff, when I'm living in this cabin in the woods, coming home, and I'm just not the same person anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's scary.
Yeah.
And so, it scares my wife. My kids pull back, at least my older kids pull back. And, my youngest daughter, who's only known me for 2 days a week, every week since she was born.
Yeah.
Just sees me as the fun entertainer that shows up and allows her to walk on tables, because mom always tells her to get down. But the reality is that it took time.
Yeah.
It took me longer to get that relationship right with my family than it did for me to get it right with me and my work. Because here was the reality, was once I got me right, my relationship with that company ended shortly thereafter.
Sure.
Because even though the company brought that organization in to do the program and said that they were bringing us in because they wanted to live the values of that program, they really didn't. And once you're living it and you know it, you can see it and you can call it out on it. And you can find when it's fake, right? Everywhere you go, they'll have words like, empowerment and alignment. They'll be all over the walls, right? They'll be on every pamphlet, every PDF that they send out to you. But you can tell when it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And for an organization, when they say we want you to call it out when it's not happening, when you call it out, and again, I'm interacting with CEOs and COOs, and they become belligerent, you realize very quickly this isn't it. You're not living it. Even more so, you're punishing those who do live it. Yeah. Not sure why you paid for this program. I appreciate it. But you are not living this program, or you're struggling. And when you call out that you're struggling, y'all don't like it. Mm-hmm. So what wound up happening was I started to become very in tune towards the end of my time at that organization with things around me. So again, changing relationships with money, relationships with work, relationships with the outdoors, relationships with the concept of energy, the relationships with, spiritual beliefs, all of that's changing at once.
Yeah.
And so what winds up happening is my daughter, who was, I think, 3 or 4 at the time, said, because I was waking up Monday morning to go off to work again, and she comes running in the room crying, begging me not to leave. And it was at that point that I realized it's time to end this. Yeah. Now I didn't have to go in and ask for anything from the company. All I had to do was acknowledge that it was time to end this.
Yeah.
Within a week, I had separated with that organization very amicably. Received a significant amount of compensation for leaving, which was unexpected. It was more of a thank you for all that you've done, and we understand what's going on. Yeah. And I still have friends at that organization today. Why do I raise it? Because, when you're talking about the relationship with the family, is what I had to do was I had to sit back and now be the same way within the family as I was at work, which means recognize when something is bothering me.
Yeah.
And then making sure what I'm calling forward is the thing that I want to use at that moment, as opposed to just reaction and then later apologizing.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think that's why I wanted to bring that tie into your personal life, because you give me the impression, and the energy I get from you is that there aren't two different Brians, that this is who you are in all aspects of your life, whether it's personal, relationship with friends, with in your work that you do, and that you're an authentic individual. And the other thing that I think was important for us to get into this conversation is that while I look at some of the other groups out there, the other men groups that are happening, like some of them have a big push on, preside and reside over our families. And I think for sometimes when I hear that, I want men to understand that may be part of our role, but if we're not emotionally in tune with how we are showing up, it can show up in a very negative way for the people that we care about the most. And so I think that's why it's so important that we really spend time unpacking this whole piece and changing and pivoting our relationship into the idea of relationships versus defining different things. And so the other thing I wanted to talk about is, it sounds like your shift also went from that being that front guy leader to being a servant leader. And in the work that I do with my men, it's one of our 12 virtues is servant leadership. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what your relationship is towards servant leadership, and how does that show up for you at work and at home?
Sure. So definitely servant leadership is a component. What I also include is observational leadership.
Nice.
So it's a combination of the two, because what I have found is that if people just view themselves as servants, they're never really able to hit those upper level emotions that they need to be able to get and seize upon things like opportunities, to really tap into the concepts of joy, like pure joy. When you're a servant, you stay down a level, because, down 2 levels, because what you're doing is you're more a caretaker. So when people hear servants, they think, and you can see those leaders, all they do is sit around and say, tell me what I can do for you. How can I make your job better? Right. And that doesn't help hardly anybody. That is not it. So the concept of being an observational leader combined with the servant leader is that, you are recognizing your ability to impact. And for me, the servanture side is you're acknowledging and willing to accept what impact you should be having.
Right on.
Sometimes that's telling somebody what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's making a very hard decision where half the people aren't going to be happy and the other half are, because you are a leader, right? Being a servant leader doesn't mean just sit back, and being an observational leader doesn't mean just sit back. It means observing about what is it that the organization, the team, the family, the whatever needs you to be in that moment. And so I'll give you the best example that I can, most recently, and how important this is. Yeah. At least for me, as to how I live. So last June, I traveled to Las Vegas. First time I had traveled outside the house since March of 2020, outside of going outdoors. Right. This is the first time I'm going to a large event. Yeah. And I come home with the Delta virus. Now, being my traditional self, as I explained to you what I didn't do with my arm, I'm, not feeling good, not feeling well. I don't even think about it being COVID. Right. I'm like, I'm just beaten down a little bit. My family is home now. They're watching me. They're watching what I do. After a week, I can no longer leave my bedroom. Wow. I can no longer take fluids. I can no longer eat. And those old things start creeping up. I'm just this weak old man laying in a bed, no good to my family, no good to nothing, because I'm not doing something. Not recognizing that actually, if I actually stepped in and played the role I was supposed to be, I could do something that would help them. Now, when you're sick, when you got 105 fever, can't take in fluids, you're dehydrated, and I don't know whether this was hallucinations or not, having conversations with things that no one else can see, and having real conversations.
Yeah.
You may not be all present at that moment. But what wound up happening was I, a person who refused to see a doctor for 15 years, got to a point to where I had to make a decision.
Yeah.
And what had happened is we were testing, first off, I was allowing my wife to test me in the house, acknowledging that I am not a rock solid person, that I may not be able to get through this, and let someone test me was a big step. By allowing that to occur, we were able to identify that moment. You probably heard a lot of the people with COVID who went to bed feeling a little bit sick and then woke up dead.
Yeah.
I was in that state.
Jeez whiz.
I went to bed and my oxygen levels were at 98. Within 4 hours, they had dropped to 79. 75 is when you're at risk of stroke.
Yeah.
So now step 2 came in, right? And by the way, at this time, my whole family has this virus.
Yes.
My oldest son, who's going off to college to play football, he's 6'3", 280 pounds. My younger son, my daughter, my wife, everyone has this virus in this house now.
Yeah.
And I have to make the decision about, do I go and ask for help? Do we call the ambulance? Or do I continue to do what I did with my shoulder? And so we called the ambulance.
Yeah.
Ambulance came, took me away. I was actually in acute respiratory failure when they showed up. So how did this help lead the family?
Yeah.
By seeing their dad willing to say, I need help.
Yeah.
That same day, my son stopped fighting it and said, I need help. Was willing to allow help to come. He got taken away by a second ambulance.
Wow.
My wife realized that she needed help. She was no longer going to just be able to help everyone. She went to the ER, to where they gave her a treatment. They didn't admit her to the hospital, but my son and I got admitted to the hospital. Now, by me being willing to ask for that help, it gave everybody else permission to ask for what they needed.
Yes.
So I didn't have to tell anybody anything. I just had to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to do for me so everyone else could see that it was okay.
Yeah.
Now, of course, my daughter and my younger son, who've never seen me even go to a doctor, are struggling with, what does this mean? Because you are in respiratory failure. You are,
mm-hmm.
You've seen on the news how people die from this thing.
Yeah.
For me, when I got in the hospital, so getting to the hospital wasn't just the only part. Now I had to get out.
Yeah.
And so when I was there, I was committed to getting out faster than anyone thought I would get out.
Mm-hmm.
Not because that was what was winning the game, but that was because my purpose in life wasn't to sit in this hospital.
Yes.
It was to do something more. And again, depending upon whether I was, I'm not sure who I was having these conversations with, but I was given a path. I was given an idea of where I should be doing and what I should be doing. And it became very clear.
Yeah.
And it became very clear how to get out of that hospital. And I went into the hospital in complete acute respiratory failure. 6 days later, I was out of that hospital. No intubation, no at-home oxygen that I used, no medications that lasted more than 3 days. And within a month, I was back to climbing mountains.
Jeez, good for you.
My son also got out the same day I did. And he and I were texting while we were in there. And I understood that part of my thing was to make sure I was doing that. Now, while I was in the hospital, being an observant person, I started to hear, and it may sound odd, but I started to hear calls, voices from my past. That when I got out of the hospital, I was finally able to talk without coughing. I reached out to those individuals. Some of them I hadn't talked to in 20 plus years. And I went ahead, found their information, texted them and said, "Hi, how are you?"
Yeah.
And what I found out was that individual specifically was in the hospital with COVID at the same time I was. And I shared with them what I heard them saying while they were in the hospital, and they couldn't believe it. And so now I realize that part of why I'm here wasn't just for me, isn't just for my family. It isn't just for that person I heard, but it's to really step into that role and start bringing forth real change for me, for those that I am around, and that those for who I am still connected to.
Absolutely. And and you're living that in spades, my friend. Absolutely. You know, what I really like about listening to your evolution is that while there's still some semblance of the old Brian, you've been able to change that relationship enough because you're in tune and in alignment with who you are as an individual, and in control of your emotions. And so one of the things I wanted to, also touch on a little bit is now you've also found in your work that there is a bit of a difference between women and men in how we relate or how emotional intelligence works with us. And so for the guys out there that are in relationships, shed some light on what that looks like.
Sure. So here's the thing I'll share for men. Because if you haven't heard it before, hear it now. You are just as emotionally intelligent as any female. And I understand that that's a concept that may be foreign. People believe that women own this space. Men and women are just as capable in this space. So the first thing is, men, accept that you can do this. Yeah. Right? That's the first thing. But we do it, we do it differently. We don't need to talk a lot. We don't need to sit down and pour our feelings out necessarily. We're, for those men who are, typically, I don't want to call it an introvert, but someone who is more into understanding yourself and dealing things with yourself, realize that it's important to recognize what's going on with yourself, but you can't do it alone.
Yeah.
So you have to find the network. And what you want to do is start trusting what it is that your first reaction to. And I know this sounds cliche, but we were all taught when we were young, if you don't know the answer to something, pick the one that came to your mind first.
Yep.
Because intuitively, you know the answer. Men, same way. Intuitively, you know the answer. The thing with men is we don't like to acknowledge if that answer that we hear is in some way, shape, or form in conflict with what our brain is telling us. We like to think.
Yeah.
And so we will think our way out of something, out of an intuition, a knowledge, a message, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So with men, the focus is on, a lot of times, is silencing your brain. Silence the thinking part. Do what you can to minimize how much thinking and rationalizing you're doing, and get in contact with that thing that we've had since the time we were born, what it is that drove men, back when we were Bushmen, all the way back to the caveman days, right? We're not the first men to walk this planet. And it's instilled in us. It's ingrained. Yeah. It's part of what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
Even if we have a Supreme Court justice who can't figure out how to define it, it is what it is part of us. And if you spend more time tapping into it instead of ignoring it, yes, disbelieving it, rationalizing it away, thinking that it is a weakness, it will actually propel you forward. And so the big thing for me in this space when working with men is to, you'll hear me use, awareness, the word awareness a lot.
Yeah.
Be aware of what it is about you that's causing your reaction. And this is, for men, this is a hard thing, is that if I'm angry, so if you've insulted me, I am angry with you. And I'm angry with you, and I'm very good at saying it's because you called me that name. But the reality is when I work with men, it's a no, stop. You're not mad with the person across from you. You're mad with yourself. At that moment, you're mad with yourself. And the reason you're mad with yourself is you aren't living up to the man you're supposed to be. And you know it.
Yeah.
So what is it that you're mad about? What is it that they just said?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're not living your life in that way.
Yeah.
So like, as an example, if somebody told a lie and someone starts going off, you lied to me, okay, no, stop. Number one, is anger the way you really want to treat this?
Right.
And number two, why are you mad? What is it about yourself right now where you're living lies?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you living lies? Because that person, all that lie did was allow you to see and reflect that being a liar isn't who you're supposed to be. We're supposed to be about truth, honesty. We know that as men.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know anyone who says, yeah, my purpose in life is to be a charlatan. That's how I want to get by. So when you stop them and you make men go, all right, wait, what? Yeah. When you stop the break and you go, all right, let me step back and look, where am I living lies? And you make them do it, right? Guys be like, oh, I don't know why. Or, they'll try to use anger and aggression and the typical, ways that they've gotten through life to get you to stop.
Yeah.
Now, the great part about working with another male is, yeah, I'm not going to stop. You asked me to help. And I'm not as intimidated with your arms flying around as someone else might be. So we're going to work through this, but we're going to work through it together. And I understand, right? So I'm sitting across from you.
Yeah.
I get it. And no, I'm not going to be worried about what you call me or what you have at it. Now, can female coaches do this? Yes, obviously. Does this work with females? Yes. But for some reason, men need the board across the forehead more than women do. And you got to give men the opportunity to go and do it themselves.
Yes.
Give them a question, give them a thing, but don't feel like you got to sit there for the next 3 hours talking about it with them.
Right.
Let them unpack it, because that's what men do. Yep. So that would be my, that's the big thing, the big messages that I have when, for men listening to this or when I'm interacting with men, either in a professional manner or in a personal manner.
Yeah. Well, I love that. The story and how you brought that all together, Brian. And it's one of those pieces of my typical closing question on. I'm still going to ask, and maybe sounds like there could be a little bit more gold that we can unmine here today. And that is, if there was everything that we've talked about, and maybe something we have yet to talk about, but if there was one thing you'd want our men listeners, and I have some females as well that listen to this, but if there's one thing you'd want them to take away from everything we talked about today, what would that be?
Perspective.
Nice.
So the one thing we haven't touched on is, as I said, I like to be outdoors.
Yes.
And so I do a lot of mountain climbing, do a lot of hiking, and with clients, I will get them outdoors as much as I can. Because when you're out in those spaces, especially, again, I have found with men, we are in our elements when we are out in the elements. Mm. And so there's a place near me, and I live in Connecticut. There's a place near me called Purgatory Chasm, where I like to take people. And when I'm working with folks to be an observational leader, I don't want them talking about mundane, everyday things. As we walk through here, I want you to observe what's around you. And I want you to talk about how you see things. And there's always one part of the chasm that we come across. And there's a tree. And the tree, when you look at it from within the chasm, looks like it's clinging to life by its roots on the edge of this cliff because of where it is that where you're standing.
Yeah.
As we walk through the chasm and we talk about other things, we go through other things, I intentionally will take them around to the top of the chasm and ask them to comment on the tree. And they'll say, wow, that tree's got a lot of space. Look at it. It's actually, quite vigorous. It's, they go into what they're seeing. And I have to remind them that's the same tree that they saw from down below that was struggling to exist.
Mm-hmm.
The tree didn't change. All that changes your perspective. And being outdoors and engaging with the outdoors allows you to change your perspective on a lot of things, because you realize how much of just a piece of everything you are, and how you can pass through it and still enjoy and appreciate and give to the place that you are.
Oh, that was outstanding. Just love that. Well, I want to say thanks, Brian, for spending time with me today. And while we were able to unpack the idea of emotional intelligence, and I know it's been around for decades, and today, though, I think we really brought a lot of relevance and how important it is for us men to get, not just to get in control of our emotions, but to truly understand and recognize the impact that we are having on others as well as ourselves. And so as a combination, I think of those two skills is how we can get better and inevitably improve the relationships in all aspects of our life. So, but the one final thing is, if anyone wanted to reach out and get a hold of you and participate in one of your programs, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. There's two ways. The easiest ways is there's email, which is brian.clate@awakenedexplorations.com. If you go to the website, awakenedexplorations.com, there is a connect. Contact me. You can go ahead and it'll send an email to me. The other way is through phone. There's still old-fashioned phone. You can text or call at 860-341-1198.
Love it. Well, I'll make sure I put all that information in the show notes. So those of us that get an opportunity can reach out with Brian. It sounds like you're doing some phenomenal work out in Connecticut. Look forward to sometime being out in that your part of the woods. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.